In March of 2016, I walked into the DC Convention Center to check out some booths at Grand Prix DC. It was my first time going to a large Magic event like this. And back then, walking into events was totally free, which I think they should go back to. You only needed to pay if you were playing in events. Since my buddy and I were just getting out of high school, we walked up to the booth and immediately started perusing the bulk $1 card bin. After looking through a bunch of cards, I found one I couldn't read. It was in Japanese and foil. I asked the guy what it was, and he said Mina and Den Wildborn, a great landfall commander. I then parted with my $1 and picked up the commander I would use for longer than any other. I've been building and tuning my Mina and Den deck for a long time, and I wanted to make a video about the current build because I love the deck so much, and on EDHREC, I can see there's barely any Mina and Den decks. So the card is a 4-mana Gruul commander that gives you an extra land drop every turn, and you can pay Gruul, bounce a land to your hand, and give a creature trample. And that's any creature, so you can give an opponent's creature trample for a political play. Part of the reason I like them so much as my commander over other Gruul commanders like Omnath is that Mina and Den are almost never worth using removal on. They're just a ramp utility piece. So spending spot removal on them is usually a huge waste, as opposed to Omnath, which is a huge threat. Mina and Den themselves are a ramp spell, and that's a huge portion of this deck. I'm running 48 lands, and including the commander, there are 12 ramp spells. Mina also lets you reuse lands in an interesting way. You can play Nykthos, activate it, bounce it to your hand, play it, activate it again for a huge burst of mana. You can also play MDFC cards as a land, and then late game, bounce them back to your hand to use the front half of the spell again. One of my favorite synergies is with Glacial Chasm. This land's a little odd. It has a cumulative upkeep of paying 2 life, and causes you to sacrifice a land when it comes into play, and makes it so you can't attack, which sounds bad, but it prevents all damage that would be dealt to you. With Mina and Den in play, not only can you play an additional land to make up the sacrificed land, but also you can easily bounce Glacial Chasm back to your hand, attack with all your creatures, play it, and reset the cumulative upkeep, and get around the not attacking clause. Plus, with crop rotation, you can instant speed grab Glacial Chasm, which has saved me so many times. Now, this commander also lets you bounce and replay lands to trigger landfall, but that actually isn't a focus of the deck anymore. After many years of changing the deck around, the landfall theme has kind of fallen to the wayside. Other than Omnath, Field of the Dead, and Valakut, there really aren't any landfall synergies. Instead, the deck is built on powerful value engines that let you grind really far into the late game. Eye of Ugin is a really excellent card. It allows you to tutor up for the couple of Eldrazi's in the deck, Ulamog if you need removal, Kozilek the Great Distortion to fill up your hand, and Kozilek Butcher of Truth, which when you pair with High Market, you can then sacrifice the Kozilek so it doesn't get exiled by a Path to Exile, and shuffle it back in your deck just for you to search it up and cast it again. Eventually, they'll run out of ways to remove Kozilek. And then the deck has a toolbox function. Other than Ashaya Soul of the Wild, Titania Protector of Argoth, and Mina and Den themselves, all the creatures are either 3 mana or less, or 6 mana or greater. And that's because of Woodland Bellower and Fierce Empath, a really cool pair that can add a lot of consistency and synergy to any green deck. Bellower can grab Empath, and Empath can get Bellower. Bellower grabs creatures 3 mana or less, Empath grabs creatures 6 mana or greater. So if I need an Eternal Witness, my Empath can get my Bellower, which can get the Witness. Or if I need a Bane of Progress, my Bellower can get Empath, which can get Bane of Progress. And with Ashaya being able to turn them into lands, Mina and Den can bounce them back to hand, and I can reuse those ETBs over and over again. Not to mention that they'll often get shuffled back in by Kozilek, allowing you to reuse them again and again. The deck also has a combo backup plan. There are not many ways to tutor for most pieces, so it's not a focused combo deck, it's more in the late game. If you haven't gotten there yet, you can use this. The combo is a bit odd and requires a lot of pieces, but I think it's fun. You're going to need Amulet of Vigor in play, which untaps all permanents that enter the battlefield tapped for you. You're also going to need Sylvan Safekeeper, Splendid Reclamation, Valakut the Molten Pinnacle, and enough mountains to trigger it, and Mirror Pool. Plus, be sure to have the colorless mana to activate Mirror Pool. First, cast Splendid Reclamation. Hold priority, and then use Sylvan Safekeeper to sacrifice all of your lands, except for Mirror Pool, to its own ability, targeting itself each time. Be sure to float your mana, and also remember to hold priority on each of this. You don't want any of these effects to resolve, because Sylvan Safekeeper gives Shroud and you'll run out of targets for its ability. Once all of that has happened, then you're going to activate Mirror Pool and copy the original Splendid Reclamation. Now, you can press priority. Now, hopefully nobody counters it or stops the combo at this point, because you'll basically lose all your lands. But if that doesn't happen, then the second Splendid Reclamation will resolve, putting all your lands back into play, which will put a bunch of Valakut triggers on the stack, and also the Amulet of Vigor trigger on the stack. You can let the Amulet trigger resolve to untap all your lands, and before you let anything else resolve, you can loop this as much as you want. Once you have enough Valakut triggers to take all your opponents out of the game, that's a clean win. Alternatively, there are a few other finishers, like if you have a bounce land as one of those lands, and Borborygmos Enraged in play, you can bounce the land to your hand and discard that for 3 damage, just in case you lose your Valakut or you don't have it. After all these years, there have been so many commanders that have tempted me to maybe add a color, or maybe just play a different Gruul commander, but I stick with Mina and Den because every time I think back to that first Grand Prix I ever went to and buying that first card there. I absolutely love this deck, and I've linked it in the description if you want to check out the full list. And let me know if you have any suggestions. I'm all ears. I've been trying to find a spot for Invasion of Ikoria, but I haven't figured out what to cut yet. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving me a like and subscribing for more.